Fire, police, paramedics, critical services provided by dedicated first responders. But keeping us safe often comes at great personal cost to them. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is twice as likely to strike first responders as the rest of us. In light of that, the province is currently considering legislation that would classify PTSD as a, quote, presumptive occupational illness. To get a better sense of what that means, we welcome, in the nation's capital, Brandon Hogan. He's a firefighter first class with the Ottawa Fire Services. That's Brendan on the left. And Silvio Gravel, Senior Advisor, Badge of Life Canada, and a former Staff Sergeant with the Ottawa Police Service. And here in studio, Vince Savoya, Executive Director at the Temaconter Memorial Trust and a former Toronto paramedic, and Dr. Donna Ferguson, Clinical Psychologist at the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health in the Psychological Trauma Program. It's really good of all of you to join us for this really important discussion tonight. I know some of the Q&A is going to get a little personal, and we'll just do our best to get through it all because we're talking about stuff that is really, really difficult. So we'll just do our best. Let's start with, if I can, a definition of what we're talking about today, because I'm not going to operate under the assumption that everybody knows what PTSD is. So let's tell you. It is characterized by a constellation of distressing and/or impairing symptoms that occur after experiencing, witnessing, or being confronted with a traumatic event that includes an actual or perceived threat to the self or others. PTSD involves repeated and intrusive memories related to the trauma, thoughts, dreams, and nightmares, avoidance of situations that are reminders of the trauma, and hyperarousal, irritability, reduced concentration, exaggerated startle response. That according to the Mood Disorders Society of Canada. And if we go to the next chart, we'll see that the prevalence of PTSD in Canada's public safety occupations is really quite something. If you go to the bottom suggests the prevalence in the general population, just over 9%. And then let's go back to the top. If you're a corrections officer, you are more than twice as likely to suffer PTSD as the general population. Same with paramedics. Firefighters, almost twice as much. Interestingly, in the military and in the police, less than the general population, which is a very curious finding. But there are the findings right there. And I want to just start with some conversation on what this is like. Brandon, I want to come to you first in Ottawa. What's it like to have PTSD?
It is a lot of dark days and dark nights. It's a life filled with anxiety and intrusive thoughts and memories, nightmares. It's very isolating and alienating, and I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy.
Is this the kind of thing that you thought, that'll never happen to me because I'm a tough guy, I'm an emergency responder, and I can handle anything?
Absolutely. I grew up as an athlete as a child, and you learn to suck up injuries. It was generally frowned upon to cry. I grew up in a family where crying was not really acceptable, and I migrated to a vocation that essentially has the same mindset.
Donna, that's quite a list that Brendan just gave us. What would you add to the list of those who suffer PTSD and what they have to go through?
Well, there's the cluster of avoidance. When you look at avoidance, you look at people who are not only avoiding their work-related triggers or the traumatic event triggers, but it kind of generalizes into other avoidance as well. So people can avoid going out in public, avoid seeing people, that kind of hypervigilance, that startle response, where you're constantly looking around and you're constantly worried about your safety and what's around you. Going to the grocery store at midnight where other people aren't around because you're worried about running into people or being in crowds, and situations like that are very difficult. And then in terms of the arousal symptoms, it can be quite difficult as well. Again, I mentioned the hypervigilance, but there's also that jumpiness, as well as that heightened irritability or anger, or sometimes rage for some people.
Let me follow up with Sid. And I gather, Silvio, that you prefer to be called Sid as a nickname, so you want me to do that for you?
Sure, that'd be good.
Okay. I have heard you describe this situation in two ways. You can develop trauma as a quote-unquote Mack truck or like a bumblebee sting. Try to explain those two different phenomena to us, if you would.
Well, a Mack truck is an acute event, something like, for example, what I went through where I was involved in the shooting death of a robbery suspect, and that was a one-off event that injured me from that point on, and there was a series of things that happened surrounding that as well. The bumblebee sting is when we're involved in things where we know that these things are going to happen, but over time, an accumulation of time over time over time of the same thing over and over again, we just reach a point where we can't handle it anymore, or we develop a chemical imbalance or an injury, and it's basically reaching a breaking point.
So, for example, Sid, if you're a police officer and you've been to, say, 100 car crashes, it might just be that 101st that puts you over the edge. Is it that kind of thing?
Absolutely. Very prevalent in policing, very prevalent in paramedics, very prevalent in military, where we do anticipate to be involved in these difficult things, but we reach a point where we've just maybe seen one too many.
Donna, when somebody, I guess traditionally in your world, a first responder presents themselves to you and says, I got PTSD, what can you do about it? What can you do about it?
In terms of treatment?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, first, I think a comprehensive assessment is important. I think we really need to know what it is they're experiencing, what their symptoms are. And I think once we've established that, we really need to know kind of what symptoms are prominent as well, because you really need to know how to treat it. So we do have evidence-based therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, where we use imaginal exposure to...
Use what?
Imaginal exposure.
What does that mean?
This is where you have somebody recount the trauma, usually taping the trauma, and taping them speaking about it, processing that together, having them process that as well at home, in between sessions. This will help with some of the re-experiencing symptoms like the nightmares that we've talked about, the intrusive memories, the flashbacks. But there's also the avoidance that we've talked about, and with that, part of prolonged exposure is in vivo exposure, and this is called real-life exposure. So actually developing what we call a step-by-step hierarchy of situations that people are actually avoiding, and trying to challenge those one step at a time.
Can you cure somebody of PTSD?
I like to think of it as helping them live more functionally.
So you don't use the word cure?
No. No. It's difficult because that trauma or that culmination of traumas really changes you forever. And that's something that we really have to acknowledge and really educate people around, because I think they're thinking, I can get back to my baseline before. And you've got a new baseline now. Right. And that's where you're starting from. So it's that piece of awareness is really important as part of the recovery and as part of the treatment.
Brandon, before you got treatment, how did you cope with your PTSD?
Initially, I utilized working. I became a workaholic to mitigate the intrusive thoughts throughout the day. There wasn't much I could do at night because I was experiencing nightmares and night terrors. And I just had a crazy schedule. I was doing 100-hour work weeks sometimes.
And did that work for you?
It did until my body screamed at me to take a break, and I succumbed to heat stroke doing some work at home, and I sustained a traumatic brain injury at that time. And I attribute it to, and it has been attributed to, the heavy workload that I had taken on to mitigate the symptoms during the day of PTSD. And as I was not sleeping at night, I was extremely sleep deprived, and my body just started to shut down physically.
I guess before I ask the next series of questions, I want to let everybody here on the program know that obviously we're going to be treading on some fairly personal ground, and you should feel free to tell me to go to hell if you want. Sorry, I can't answer that question. Because the last thing I want to do here, in an attempt to kind of make our viewers more aware of what you're going through, is to put you in situations where you're going to be reliving stuff that is going to be hurtful. So I don't want to do that. Having said that, I'm going to try and nudge as close to the line as I can get so that I can give our viewers a better understanding of this issue we're talking about tonight. So Brandon, while you've got the floor, can you take me back to March 2005 and what happened that night?
Yeah, it was a morning call, actually. We had done our truck checks. We received the printout in the watch desk, because that's where we receive our calls. As reading the printout, it indicated that it was a child vital signs absent. And that is one of the worst calls for first responders, in my opinion. I think many others would agree. And it was just a block away, so I didn't have a lot of time to prepare mentally for the call either. Sometimes you have the opportunity to sort of think things through and how you're going to react to the call, sort of a preemptive thinking about how you're going to handle things or what we might encounter. As I arrived at the scene, I was the lead medic at the time, so I found the child on the bed, and he was a lower level of consciousness but alive, and I was relieved because initially the call came in as that he's essentially dead. So it was my job. I was tasked with obtaining some vital signs, and it was difficult to get vital signs from this child because he was, even though he couldn't respond to me and his eyes were closed, he was very combative and very strong, and I thought that was encouraging. So I continued to do my best to get vital signs. I did manage to get a few. At that time, the paramedics arrived on scene. I updated them on my findings, and then I stood by to assist them as required if necessary.
Brandon, did you know why the child was in the condition that, was it a he or she?
It was a young boy.
Young boy. Do you know why the boy was in such distress?
Yes, he had, I think he had thought the antipsychotic medications that his mother was prescribed, it's my theory that he thought they were candy. They were a pale blue color, if I remember, and the mother was just distraught. And yeah, I can see how that may be appealing to a young child.
What eventually happened to the young boy?
After the paramedics took over the scene and started to do their evaluations and assessments, they examined the medicine bottle. One of the paramedics was on the phone. I don't know if it was with Poison Control or Base Hospital, and he exclaimed that it's load and go. And that essentially means it's no more work on site. We got to get this child to the hospital. So we loaded the child into the ambulance. They asked for one of the firefighters to come with them. I went with them in the case that CPR may need to be conducted. We had a police escort to the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario. It was one of the fastest times I've traveled down the Queensway. And so as we were going down the road, the monitor on the child was starting to go into alarm. He was going into different rhythms, and the medic in the back exclaimed to the driver to hurry the F up. And I knew things were going south quickly. There was not a lot for me to do at the time, so I took it upon myself to hold the child's hands and then try to verbally encourage him to stick there with us. I said, come on, little man, hang in there, we're almost there. We're almost there. You know, the good people at CHU are going to take good care of you. As we arrived on scene, the monitors were doing some awful stuff. I'm not prolific enough to understand what those monitors mean, but all the alarms indicated things were not going well.
Brandon, did the child make it?
At that point, as we arrived to the hospital emergency doors, I felt him leave. And I can't remember if the monitor had gone flatline or not. There's some vague moments in my memory still with that. We brought the child into the emergency rooms. The doctors and nurses crowded around the child very quickly. I waited to be excused, and I was excused, and I was awaiting for my ride back to the station.
Vince, let me move to you. January 27th, 1988. You mentioned it was Temaconter. For people who've lived in Toronto a long time, they will remember that situation. What did you happen upon?
Just the sheer resemblance of Tema to my fiance. When I pulled back the bed sheets and I saw Tema that day, I thought it was my wife. And the similarity was so strong that my partner, who was standing next to me, actually verbally asked me if it was my fiance lying on the bed.
It was not.
It was not. We came to the conclusion that it was not. We had to make a decision, and that decision was whether or not we were going to attempt resuscitation.
What had happened to her?
She had been raped and stabbed multiple times. Autopsy results indicate that she had been stabbed in excess of 11 times.
Was she still alive when you found her?
No, she was deceased. But having said that, I struggled with the decision not to resuscitate for years, because in some way, shape, or form, I blamed myself for Temma's death, even though I had nothing to do with it. But as a paramedic, you go onto a scene wanting to save someone's life. And when you go through the actions and you don't save that life, you can understand that you're not going to be able to save everybody, right? But in my mind, we didn't even try with Temma.
But she was deceased when you found her.
She was.
So it's illogical for you to think you could have done anything about that.
Very illogical.
So why did you think that?
I have no idea. And that's why I carried around that sense of guilt for years, Steve. It didn't make any sense to me. So.
Sid, I'm going to take you back almost 30 years now. 1987, August 16th rather. What happened on that day?
Well, I was patrolling the south end of the city of Ottawa. We'd received information that there'd been an armed robbery at what was then called the city of Gloucester. So there was a radio disconnect between the information that was quickly available by the time I would get it. So at one point we got enough information to believe that we could know what to look for. Finally, there was a car that came from the direction of the city of Gloucester into Ottawa. And my partner and I decided to pull the car over based on the driving mannerisms being displayed. Went through a stop sign, four-wheel skid around the corner. Thought I had a driver who was a female, pulled the car over, and it turned out to be a male with long hair stepping out of the car. This was at 3 o'clock in the morning. As he stepped out of the car to approach me, he was quite angry and agitated at being stopped. The dispatcher then clarified the description of the robbery suspects, and obviously it matched, one of them being the driver, and he heard the description as well, so jumped in his car and took off. We went off in pursuit. Several corners were cut through the yards. They just drove right through the front yards to cut the corners, hit several cars that were parked. Money was being thrown out the passenger door window. Finally, they crashed into a couple of cars that were parked into a private parking lot. I stepped out of the car and turned to my partner. Of course, we agreed that this was some serious stuff happening here, and started to yell commands for the suspects to show us their hands, show us their hands. The driver went under, passengers stood out of the car and stepped in front of the car that they had just smashed into, and turned towards me and started to look right at me, and I'm yelling at him to show me his hands. And at this point, the neighbor comes out of her house yelling at us for what's going on, and I see a guy walking his dog in the middle of the night, just half a block away, walking towards us. And I'm thinking, I got a lot of people here, and I don't know where this gun is. I don't know what this guy has in his hand. He's not listening to me. The driver's now hidden himself. So finally, he starts to turn towards the right, and as he's turning towards the right, he's pulling his right hand out from the front of his pants. So I shot him, wanting to stop him from continuing that motion. And at that point, he went down, then arrested the driver, pulled him out, put the cuffs on him, went to the body of the suspect, and turned him over, and his hand was still in the front of his pants. We got the hand out, and there was no gun. And it was a difficult moment at that time, because I had made the decision based on all the signs being there for the man being armed and dangerous, and here I had just discovered I had shot an unarmed man, regardless of the reason for him being a suspect of an armed robbery. The point is, for me, I had just shot, and he was dying as we looked at him. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was deceased. And it was one of those shots that took him right through to the heart. It was just devastating for me to go to work as a police officer, wanting to do things right for the community, and taking a life of a man who I had made a decision on the basis that he was armed and wasn't armed. It was just, I couldn't disconnect from that event for weeks. I kept repeating it over and over in my mind. It was very difficult.
Well, I want to first of all thank all three of you for getting through those stories. I know how hard that must have been. And Donna, I want to follow up with you now, because my hunch is 30 years ago, or almost 30 years ago when some of these events happened, I mean, we never heard of PTSD. We didn't even say PTSD. It wasn't a thing yet, right? So at what point did these three gentlemen, when could they be diagnosed with something that at that point might not even have existed?
Well, I think the name has evolved over the years. I think the symptoms have always been there. It's just people really didn't identify and know how to describe them until, and we've had these diagnostic statistical manuals that have over the years have evolved in terms of the diagnoses. And even now I think it's called PTSD, but it's still thinking of ways of describing it so that it doesn't have that connotation attached to it for some. But I think it's really important that the symptoms be acknowledged and that people know and understand what they're dealing with. Sometimes people over a period of time, especially when I'm dealing with my first responders, may have symptoms over the years on the job and either push them away and continue to just push through, or continue, be symptomatic but be afraid to come out. Because worried about what's going to happen at the workplace, worried about the stigma, worrying about saying I'm dealing with PTSD.
So one of the things that first responders have had to deal with over the years is, first of all, have these symptoms recognized, and then I guess the next step, which is to say they are engaged in the kinds of work where you're going to see a lot of terrible stuff, and we can't just assume.
Right.
I'll go to you first on this, Vince. We just can't assume that you guys are going to suck it up and have the stiff upper lip and all of that, right?
Why
I mean,
not?
What's that?
Why not?
Why
Everybody
not?
else does.
Really? You still find that there's still a culture out there that expects you guys just to suck it up?
Very much so. And I think it's a societal culture, but the way we as a society deal with mental illness as a whole. People who are mentally ill, and I'll throw PTSD into that category, rightly or wrongly.
You think it's a mental illness?
Well, it's a disorder. It's caused by a trauma, right? That is treatable. Maybe not curable. That is treatable. But again, somebody's just been diagnosed as being depressed. He or she's not going to be open with that diagnosis with their friends or family because they're going to be ashamed that they're mentally ill.
Right? Brandon, I gather you got your official diagnosis of PTSD a few years ago. And let's look into the culture here. Firefighters, they're supposed to be tough, macho guys and just sort of suck it up and not, share the feelings that they might be feeling. Were you concerned that the diagnosis would somehow put you in a lesser light among your colleagues?
Yes, absolutely. I worked in a pretty tough fire station. It had a reputation as a pretty tough fire hall in Ottawa, but I loved the work. And if I can digress a little bit, I could identify with Vince's story that this little boy was reminiscent of my son at the time. He was 5, and that was my Mack truck, so to speak. I like that term. But yeah, absolutely. I was a junior member at the time. And you're still green, you're still learning the ropes. So I didn't know who to turn to on the job, so I just buried it. And generally, the culture was like that anyway, where we cared for each other, but you didn't share emotionally. It was not really taboo. It was just a macho environment, and you just didn't do it.
Right. Sid, is there a fear that you may actually even lose your job if you acknowledge these fears?
Yeah, I think as it stands right now, the big question is if you admit to having PTSD or suffer from depression or anxiety to the point where it's affecting your ability to go to work, you certainly do feel like, are they going to start questioning my ability to do the job? One of the biggest fears I had after being involved in that shooting, I was having such a difficult time dealing with it that I often wondered, would they start to question my ability to be able to make that decision again if I had to, because these things happen. and I didn't want to appear weak or unable to do the job. So you just keep it to yourself, and you allow all the suffering to happen quietly at home, in secret, and then you go to work and you put a smile on your face and you push your way through it. People ask you how you're feeling, you say, feelings inside not expressed, I'm feeling fine. Feelings inside not expressed, none of your business, I'm fine. And then you go home and you put a bottle of vodka down just because you can't sleep. And it's your secret place.
Vince, I gather at some point, if you're suffering from PTSD, you're going to want to, this is a workplace injury. You're going to want to go to the Worker Safety and Insurance Board, and you want to go through the process of trying to be compensated for your workplace injuries. Have you been through that process?
No, my incident happened back in 1988. PTSD wasn't even on their radar back then.
Okay, but you've heard from others who've been through it.
Definitely.
What's it like?
From what I understand, it's the most inhumane experience that they've been put through, because they're consistently asked to relive the event. And the unfortunate reality is that if they don't have a single incident or episode that they can point to, my understanding is that WSIB is very reluctant to accept a PTSD diagnosis based on an accumulation of events. And it's tough to get approval.
Is the assumption, Donna, that, these guys are just shirkers and they're trying to get a free compensation package here?
I mean, I don't know if that's the assumption. I think generally in terms of their process, part of that process is investigation. I think they have to go through this process of, what is the actual event, and how do you link that causal event to the actual diagnosis of PTSD. And it's very difficult when you're dealing with first responders, because many times, as was said, there's not just one event. And so how do you then describe that, well, it was maybe the 2000 event, or maybe it was the 2007 event? Not quite sure.
So Brandon, one of the things I gather the Ontario legislature is considering right now is what they call a presumptive understanding that PTSD is in place. If that bill goes through eventually, they've been debating it for a while, if that goes through, how would that change things?
Change things for the future, or
yes,
my
exactly.
situation?
No, for the future, for people in the future with PTSD.
Well, it's through treatment, I've learned that PTSD is a biological brain injury. It affects the amygdala, which is the primal brain in the human. So once that's damaged, it's you have a lot of cognitive issues, attention issues, sleep issues, and so the sheer amount of paperwork and screening and processes that you have to go through to be diagnosed with PTSD is onerous on and it's taxing on an already taxed brain. So this will alleviate some of that, hopefully, and you will not send first responders into triggering stories. After my investigations or interviews and stuff, I would go home, I was severely triggered, and I would turn to a bottle of alcohol to mitigate the symptoms at that time.
So Sid, if the new law goes through, the change I understand would be that it would be, the onus would be on the employer to prove you don't have it, as opposed to the onus being on you to prove that you do. That would be a change I presume you would favor?
Well, very much so, because, you're talking about police officers, ambulance, firefighters, first responders who are at their weakest moment. And, you're dealing with, a very complex process. When you go through the WSIB, I had to appeal 3 times. By the time my claim was recognized, the arbitrator stated that I should never have had to put in an appeal in the first place. And so, you wonder, why did you put me through 3 years of this if it wasn't necessary? And I think that with the onus being on people who, who can look at clarity of thought as opposed to the person who's hurting, would make sense to me, absolutely.
Brandon, we live in a world now where there's, quite often a lack of sympathy for a lot of people. And for those people who say, hey, buddy, this is what you signed up for, you knew what you were, facing, so the onus is on you, not on the employer, what would you say to them?
You have an idea of what you're going to be exposed to, and movies and the sensationalization of that does not help, because there's with death as a first responder, there's the sights, there's the smells, there's the sounds, the feel of it, and that's something you can't train for. So you can do CPR on all these mannequins all you want to, and bandage them up and everything else, but it's when you're dealing with the physical body and these sights and sounds and the other senses that are tied with it, it's profound. You don't get used to it. You really do not get used to it, and it comes back in snapshots, I call them. I was an instructor at Algonquin College for a pre-entry firefighting course there, and I would encourage my students that if they didn't have to look at an emergency scene, a traumatic scene, don't look, because these are snapshots that may and will come back to haunt you sometime.
Sheldon, I want just a word to our director, Sheldon Osmond here. Page 8, graphic 2. Let's bring this up now. Vince, I need you to take us through this, because this is for the year 2015, reported Canadian suicides per 100,000 people. And as you look at that chart, that's your old occupation, my friend. Paramedics, very disproportionately taking their own lives compared to police, military, firefighters, Canadian men in general, Canadian women in general. And I have to ask, why paramedics so disproportionately take their own lives?
Well, I do have to preface by saying that this is just for the year 2015.
Okay, you think it's an anomaly?
I don't know. I hope not. But what the numbers tell us is that when we look at the suicide rate per 100,000, paramedics are at 45 right now. Mm-hmm. And that is concerning in that paramedicine is still one of those occupations where this subject matter in many services across the country is still taboo, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the job of a paramedic, not to take away from what a police officer and firefighter does, but the medics are with those patients from the moment they get there to the time they offload at the hospital.
So you may see them at their worst.
You always see them at their worst.
As if this situation isn't difficult enough, let me add this to the mix here. Police officers that take their own lives are now not included on the Toronto Police Memorial Wall. It is part of a dispute between the Human Rights Commission and the Toronto Police, the Commission alleging that the police service is discriminating against officers with PTSD. So Sid, you're the cop here. I should ask you, should they be included on the wall?
I believe they should be, knowing full well how close I came to that moment where suicide was seriously contemplated in terms of relieving that broken record that kept playing in my mind in terms of what happened. I would have died as a result of what happened on this job, though I would have done it by my own hand. And I truly believe that officers who are committing suicide by paying the price of being at the forefront, doing things a lot of other people won't do. The other thing I want to just point out here is that there was a study done in New York City where 90% of us as Canadians will experience trauma once in our lives. And many of us as Canadians need help to deal with those. Police officers in a 30-year span will deal with 600 traumatic events on average. So they already are a fairly resilient bunch of people. If they break, if they get injured, there's an obligation to make sure that they get the help that they need. And if we lose them to suicide, there's an obligation to honor them as well.
Brandon, I hate to ask this, we're down to our last minute here, but I know you did attempt to take your own life because the trauma of it all for you had got to a point where it was too much. Do you think we are doing an adequate job honoring those who lose their lives through suicide as opposed to on the job with memorials and so on?
There's really not a lot of information with regards to access to being honored as a sort of a workplace injury. If a firefighter dies of a presumptive cancer, for instance, you are considered dying in a line of duty, and that has your hero essentially. But if you take your life because of PTSD, it's not reflected the same way.
I can't thank all of you enough for joining us for what has been a very difficult but important conversation to have. Brandon Hogan and Silvio Gravel in the nation's capital, and Donna Ferguson and Vince Savoya here in our Toronto studios. Thanks so much, everybody. We're really grateful for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.